time in the world for this block.
Awesome. All right, good. Well, we are ready to rock and roll. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us for Mindset Monday. And if you're tuning in to this from the podcast, welcome. We're so excited to have you here. I have a very special guest with me this week, and Kevin is very special to me for a couple of reasons, and he's special for Mindset Monday and the Alignment Tribe for another reason. Kevin and I met last year during when I joined a high ticket mastermind. He was the copywriting and content coach, and he invited me to be the mindset coach inside his amazing program. And it has been such a huge blessing and joy in my life. Not only do I love the clients that he creates in his business, but many of those clients have also decided to work inside Align and Design Your Life, which has just been so great to be able to combine the two, the mindset and the content creation for coaches and business owners and women entrepreneurs. So Kevin's given me a huge opportunity to live in my true nature and purpose. And for that, I'm so grateful. And the other reason Kevin is a special guest is he's the first man on Mindset Monday and the podcast. So special kudos to you, Kevin, for stepping up and being the first guy in our Mindset Monday and on the podcast. I couldn't have picked a better person. You have been so integral in the creation of the Alignment Tribe and Align and Design Your Life, and all of the great work that we've been able to do for our clients. So thank you so much for taking time to be with us today and to share your story and your expertise, because I think your story is amazing, and what you have to share, I know really works. And without further ado, I'd love for you to share with everybody who you are, what you do, and who you serve.
Yeah, well, first, amazing. And I'm super honored to be the first male guest on here. I'm going to set the bar high. And I hope you guys are going to get, listening to this, you guys are going to get a ton of value out of my story and where I came from and all the great things that Christine taught or teaches. I wish I had way back when I was a lowly trainer with the poor belief structures. So
me too, by the way. We learn as we go.
Yeah, exactly. And that experience, that wisdom just really carries through. So I'm Kevin. And what I do is I help coaches in the health, wellness, and personal development industry get more sales calls from their Facebook group and email list by teaching them how to create bridging type content.
Awesome. And you started this, how long have you had content? So you have a couple of programs, but how long have you been in this online space?
I've been in the online space actually since 2012.
Oh,
2012.
cool.
Yeah. So I've seen all the evolution of Facebook and how you can do a like campaign back in those days and it would work somewhat. To all the way till now where people are more sophisticated in what they require to really convert a high ticket client in the health and wellness industry.
Yeah. So what sparked your interest in working with this particular niche?
It's a good question. So I started off as a gym owner. So I was a strength coach and a nutrition coach. And that was in 2008 is when I started my career in that. Left my corporate job and started a gym. And during that time, like any coach, I just consumed education. So not just taking courses and certifications, because back then, if you wanted to learn from the best, you actually had to fly there. So I would pay for these courses, $2,000, and then, all said and done, it's another $2,000 when you fly there, hotel and eating. It's probably spent about $30,000 in education and in functional medicine. And so that really helped me in terms of getting my name out and getting started and getting some results. And then that got a lot of referrals. And then suddenly my referrals started drying up around, let's say 2011. And it was funny because back then, when I was doing this stuff, there was two schools of thoughts running around. One, if you need to market and you're not running your business off referrals only, you're a bad coach.
Mm,
And, this is from my two big mentors. One of them, Charles Poliquin, was a big mentor of mine, and he had a successful business. He's trained dozens of Olympic gold medalists. So obviously with that power, I was like, oh man, if you say that, like, I don't want to be looked like that. So same with my business coach that I hired in 2009, whose business was referrals.
mhm.
And if you're not getting 80% of your business from referrals, you're a bad coach. So that was my belief structure back then as a nutritionist and strength coach.
Our paths are so similar in so many ways. So around that same time, I had opened a Pilates studio, and I was a Pilates instructor, and I had done the same thing, paid for certifications to teach Pilates. And then I was also starting to do some nutrition coaching with my clients because people were coming to me, wanting like a well-rounded experience. So I started getting certifications in nutrition as well. And a lot of the business that I did was referral based. It was very local, right? I mean,
Mhm.
I didn't have to go out to a really wide market. I could only really go as far as people were willing to drive.
Yes.
So I would do a lot of referral marketing. I was in a network, like a networking group that met once a week, and we referred each other. Or I would go to running groups because I taught Pilates
Mhm.
for runners. I would go to running groups and do like free demos and work with people. And I think my advertising budget in a year was maybe like $100. Like I really didn't spend any kind of money on advertising or marketing. It was all like referrals and meeting people and asking them who they knew. And, so
Yeah.
yeah, I totally get that mindset. Like when you have a brick and mortar, that's definitely, I think, the place that people start, at least.
Mhm.
But interesting that your mindset was that if you're not doing it that way, it means you're failing. My mindset around it was marketing's expensive,
Mhm.
advertising's expensive. If I can get referrals all word of
Mhm.
mouth, then that's less money I'm putting out there to keep this business going.
Oh man, I can so relate to that. Like you and I both had those belief structures all in
Mhm.
a, different way, and which is exactly what you teach to in your program to really kill those belief structures so we can really show up as our true self.
Mhm.
And for years, I was like studying like crazy. Textbooks, that's what I'd be reading at 7 p.m. at night after the gym. 7 p.m., I'd be reading textbooks, I'd be consuming information because, again, belief structure, marketing, bad coach. And then I didn't want to be embarrassed by marketing because all my friends and my mentors were looking at me. And that's all good and well. And now knowing what I know, honestly, first, I wish I had a Christine. And then second is that marketing really is a type of coaching. It's
Mm.
just that it's a different layer of coaching. We're coaching our people who don't know us to coach them to make a different decision based off shifting their beliefs. But obviously, we got to do the work on ourselves first. So
Yeah.
in 2011, so I opened my business at a terrible time. 2008 is when the financial crashes happened, credit was short. There's all this like instability. And I
Mhm.
believe SARS, like pandemic, I think it was swine flu or something,
Uh-huh.
some minor pandemic was happening at,
H1N1.
yes,
Yep.
that's happening in 2009. I opened
Yep.
my business during that. And it was all good and well doing this, $30,000 on education. I did get referrals, yes, but that lasted me till the end of 2011, where my referral pipeline started drying up because my networks was so boxed in.
Mhm.
And so around that time I was drying out, like, oh man, it's like, am I that coach? And you know what? I'm gonna just try this marketing thing. And that's when I started learning about online marketing courses. Ads were the big thing at the time, Facebook ads. So started learning those things, and it started working. And with rudimentary skills back then, I started writing posts using formulas and templates, and it just started working. I started getting my Facebook page to grow. Then those people will come in for a free session and such, and that all that stuff kind of started changing. So then I was like in between,
Yeah.
still in between should I keep doing this? And then I'm going to get judged or challenged,
Mhm.
but it's kind of working and my network's going to run dry. So I was at a crossroads, Christine. I don't know if you have any
Yeah.
of that with your clients where they're just so torn
Yep.
between A and B because of those belief structures, and like, how do you move on
Yeah.
and really own one?
All the time. All the time. I mean, every time that we want to grow, every time we're moving outside of what's familiar, we have to challenge those structures, right?
Yeah,
We
and
have to challenge what's familiar versus the growth and the unknown.
mhm,
Yeah.
100% growth, what you're saying. That's what we as entrepreneurs need to do, because if we're not growing, we're obviously dying.
Yeah.
So I was at that crossroads, and necessity really pushed me to continue on with marketing because got to pay the bills. They're
Mhm.
not going to pay themselves. So, so I reached out to my mentors and, saying, oh, just, ask your whatever old clients to get them to refer them. I'm like, well, my pipeline's dry. Like they've referred everybody that they can for like 2 years. So, so I went on and just did this because I just did it I had to do it out of necessity. But I was being held back because there was a point where I took a long time to write content. And at that time in 2011-ish, I was just still running one gym and growing it. So it's just pretty much me running everything in there. So I didn't have time, and it took me a long time to write content. And I thought, based off these old belief structures here, is that I needed to sound smart.
Mm.
I needed to sound smart for all the stuff that I talk about with strength and conditioning, because all, my mentors and all my colleagues are using big terms and they're citing studies. So I'm like, oh man, I gotta cite at least 3 studies, and I gotta use these big words. So there was a point where like my reach kind of like stalled because people weren't really understanding that. Like there's a certain market that just, what the heck are you talking about?
Mhm.
Just tell me the
Yeah.
thing.
Right, right.
and so yeah, that all like stalled out my reach and everything, and I kind of like burnt out whoever was kind of into strength and conditioning and was competing and wanted to get strong and knew about functional medicine. So I was like, oh man, like what is going on? Maybe it isn't working, maybe it's me. So I'm just battling here in this crossroads. And in 2012, that's kind of where a lot of things changed for me and where I got a lot of hyper growth. And I don't know what it was. It was, oh yeah, there was a book, um, Psycho-Cybernetics.
Yeah. Excellent read.
Psycho-Cybernetics. Yeah, so that was kind of one of my first mindset books that I was reading. And, it talked about the visualization and stuff like that. But what really struck to me, the theater of mind and all that, but what really struck to me is like, think about things in the future of who you want to be.
Mhm.
So, here's Kevin stuck, wanting to be successful, $30,000 education behind him. um, how do I get myself out there? So, well, what would this other person be, and who do I look up to that markets themselves really well? So I just kind of looked out there, like who was doing really well and what were they doing, and they're showing up online. I think is Instagram and Facebook at the time, and they really own what they all did, showing them working out, giving an opinion, and when you read their content, like there was an energy to it.
Mm.
There's an energy to their content where it was like, whoa, I agree. Or this guy sounds, or this girl sounds like they really, really believe in that stuff. And
Mm.
so you become intrigued and then you start following them. So, people I looked at the time were, whoever I felt like an attraction to based off their content.
Mhm.
And they're not citing things and they're not using big words like, sarcomeres and all that stuff of strength and conditioning. So what were they doing? So, from there, I started really understanding to own what you do and own yourself. So own what you
Mm.
do. Does your process work? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
well, for sure, I know my process works. And then owning myself, I didn't own myself
Yeah.
because I was afraid to be judged. I had this belief structure that I was continually fighting marketing equals bad coach.
Right.
So that was such a big fight to understand, okay, how do I get past this? And, I think one of what you guys do in your align and design is doing like those exercises,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where you're kind of like meditating and it's kind of like you're thinking about your future self. Is that right? And stepping into that, is that right?
Yeah. It's creating your just because outcome. So creating what it is that you want and who you're being when you have that, and
Mm-hmm.
really bringing that into your present moment. So not waiting until the future before you get to be who you want to be or feel the way that you want to feel. It's practicing feeling that way so that your mind and your body start getting used to this being you in your present state as you're taking action towards creating the things that you want to experience in your life.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And for me, I didn't know any of that at that time. So my process was a little slower, but what I knew was about action and sticking the action with a feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So for me at that time, in 2012 was just doing it first. My just because outcome at that time was just to be the go-to person for this topic, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Strength and conditioning and nutrition. And at that time, I was trying everything. I ran a death race that was 125 kilometers. Never ran over 10K in my life, but I decided, woke up one day and I just said, okay, I'm going to do this just to prove to myself that I can do it, owning the process, owning myself. I took a very long route. So this is why we have people like you. And then I competed in Olympic weightlifting competitions where you like throw the weight over your head and such, and competed in those. I've done slim downs where I got myself down to 8% body fat, all within the span of a year, this long journey,
Oh, wow.
just to prove to the feeling that I can own this. And then
Yeah.
after that, because experience for me led to shaping my beliefs, and then I just own myself more. Like, nope, this is the way. And
Mm-hmm.
then obviously after watching everybody else, like I can model them, but I didn't really own it.
Mm-hmm.
So after doing all of that in a span of like 1 year, I wouldn't recommend that running like
That's a lot.
training for a 125-kilometer race to getting really, really strong to lift double your body weight over your head. No, I wouldn't do that. Uh,
Yeah, those are two very opposite
yes,
things that
it's
happen with your body, the running or the lifting.
yes, that is
Yeah.
very hard on the body. But aside from that, and that's why we have these techniques that you do, which is like amazing, like
Mm-hmm.
shortcuts. When I had the feeling stuck to what I was doing, I finally started owning it, and I could see that person, Kevin, the go-to person, the authority
Yeah.
in the strength and conditioning space. And I started owning my content, meaning that if I was going to give an opinion saying this is right, that is wrong, or as polarizing something, or as educating, I didn't cite anything anymore. I just said, from this, my experience, this is it. And if you want to challenge it, cool. I've already done it. You can
Mm-hmm.
challenge it. That was my mindset kind of going into that. And then if it's okay if I share with your audience, I figured out there's like 3 postures now
Yes.
of like that I was subconsciously doing, that you're subconsciously doing, that your gurus are subconsciously doing. And I had to figure this out the long way through my struggles, but I'm thankful for those struggles
Yes.
because now I can break it down and I can tell you what's going on. So is this follow me so far, Christine?
Yes,
I've
absolutely.
been
Absolutely.
talking a lot.
Yes. No, this is great. I mean, one of the things that I'm hearing you say is that in order for you to break the limiting beliefs that you knew were
Hmm.
holding you back. I mean, we talk about our subconscious beliefs a
Yeah.
lot, but they're really, for the most part, we know what they are.
Hmm.
We're somewhat aware of them. We're just either trying to ignore them, we're trying to push against them, or we're trying to, in some way, we're not actually creating real awareness around them. And
Mhm.
for you, creating that awareness around it was like, oh, there is a limitation here in what I'm sharing and what I'm doing because I'm afraid of judgment. I'm afraid of
Mhm.
what other people will think if I just start doing these things in an unconventional way, doing things the way a way I'm not seeing other people do it. And so your solution to that, once you created that awareness, was to go out and create the identity or the
Mhm.
version of you who wasn't afraid of the criticism,
Mhm.
who didn't care about the judgment, who was doing things like pushing yourself physically. Because I know I have friends who've done Ironmans and like these crazy long 100-mile runs and all this kind of stuff. Like I know the dedication it takes. I mean, I've run marathons, but no more than I haven't done like 100-milers, but I know the
Yeah.
dedication that it takes. And you do, when you commit to something like that and you're consistent with it, it changes your identity. You know, you start to identify yourself as someone who is not just like, oh, I'm a ultra runner or I'm a
Mhm.
Olympic weightlifter. It's like, I'm a person who can rely on himself. I'm a
Yeah.
person who can finish what I start. I'm a person who can commit to doing scary things
Mhm.
and survive it. Like I can do
Yeah.
tough things, right? And you begin to up level that identity. And that's why I think sports and business have so many great analogies, right? In order for you to like hit those levels, you have to shift your identity along in that process. And then,
Mhm.
you know, bringing it back to like what we do inside your group and my group is without having to do that sort of like long-term physical commitment of changing your identity, we do it in a meditation or we do it in the realign process where in an instant we can, because our subconscious has no concept of time or space.
Yeah.
It can imagine that who you are and the identity that you have in the future is you right now. So
Mhm.
you actually just create this image in your mind of who it is you want to be and what you want to experience. And you bring that into how you're feeling in the moment. So you kind
Mhm.
of short circuit that time from,
Mhm.
you know, and you can save yourself, you know, a few
A year.
miles and, and a little wear and
And
tear on your body. But
that's what's so beautiful. Sorry to interrupt, but you were
no, go
saying
ahead.
something super important there. That's what's so beautiful about combining the mindset work that you do in envisioning and embodying the feelings with the actual application of that. Because for me, I kind of knew what I wanted, but I needed to do the application first, which then started to shape who I wanted to be. Like I knew I want who I wanted to be, but I didn't know what that person did. So this
Got
is
it.
why it's such a shortcut
Yeah.
of a marriage of like, okay, you go through these exercises and you do this. Okay, cool. I can see that person. I can feel that thing. Now it's aligning those actions, which is kind of what we do in contact converts, how
Yes.
you phrase it, how you show up. So I just want to point that out. Like that's, you just kind of put everything together. I'm like, aha.
Yes.
This
Yeah.
is a summary of it.
I totally see
Mindset
those
meets content.
connections. Yeah. You can take the action to create the identity, or you
Mhm.
create the identity and you have to take the action. Either way, it becomes its own loop, right? You
Yeah.
step into who you want to be, you take the aligned action. As you're taking the action, you become more of who you want to be.
Mhm.
And it becomes this self-fulfilling thing. And you're
Yep.
actually changing yourself not just on an identity level, but you're actually changing your neural pathways and your own
Mhm.
body chemistry in the
Mhm.
process. It's pretty fascinating.
It's extremely fascinating. And before I go into the three types of mindset postures in the content, actually, I want to back it up a little bit.
Cool.
Through that experience of going really, really skinny as a runner
Yeah.
to actually really skinny is relative. I was actually the most muscular person in the training groups, and I was told to lose muscle.
I
Even
know.
then, I
Right.
did lose muscle. I was still bigger than everybody else. So it's relative, and then going really, really strong. So through that, it kind of just starts to reprogram you when you're taking action about your standards.
Mm,
So, I could like, I've never ran over 10K in my life. And then I just decided 4 months to train for this race. I wanted to give up. Like there's a time where I was cramping on the race. My legs were seizing up, my calves were seizing up. I had like 25 kilometers to go to the next checkpoint. And I ended up like, I just wanted to give up. I like wanted to cry at one point, like man cry,
Mm-hmm.
and by myself, but there's other runners beside me. So I'm like, no, I'm not gonna do that. Instead, I actually found a river and I just dunked my whole body in the river by holding a branch and just let everything flush out. I just wanted to give up. And they have these quads going by. If you want to quit, you can just flag them down. They'll carry you on the back. But the shame in quitting was stronger than figuring a way out to keep going. So after that realization, after the race, and where I didn't quit, I came up with some standards and some principles. And I think this is a lot of times people are missing these of like that next person who you want to be. Well, what are their principles and rules they operate by?
Right.
Because we all talk about alignment and what feels good and what doesn't feel good. Well, you don't know what feels good and doesn't feel good if you're not aligned with some principles. And one of mine is I redefine failure and I redefine being judged. Is it really being judged if somebody challenges me, a colleague, saying, oh, that's wrong because you didn't cite blah, 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 or this research says this, blah, blah, blah. Well, if it's in alignment with me that it's going to help my clients because the way they're stuck, is it still in alignment no matter
Right.
what they say?
Right.
It is. And same with failure. What is failure? Well, failure is completely giving up and never finding a different way to do it.
Right.
So I define these principles based off these actions that I've taken and the successes and created principles and rules that guide me. And then that's what kind of came, and then that spilled over to, just going for it,
Yeah.
owning the just because outcome, and showing up in the content as well, because we're not in front of people when we're writing content. It's just your words. And how those others, where they attracted me to follow them, was how they owned themselves, because they were aligned with their principles of that person that makes whatever 20, 30, 50, 100K a month.
Such good stuff. You said so many great things there. And the idea of having the principles and the standards is so important in determining who you're showing up as every day. One of the things we talk a lot about in our program is that you have to know what it is that you want to create, right? For your health, for your relationships, for your business, for your spiritual development. Those are the 4 areas we choose. What do you want to create? You've got to know where you're going. And then what are you doing in an aligned way to back that up? And we talk a lot about habits. Like, what are the habits that you are engaging in on a daily or weekly basis that actually align with those outcomes that you're creating? Like, what are the principles and the standards that you're living by? Because if you say that you want health and vitality, yet none of the habits that you're engaged in on a daily basis actually align with creating health in your body, then there's a disconnect there, right? And always it's in that disconnect that we feel the worst. We make things personal. It's a very disempowered state to be in. And I also love that you said the 2 things for you that were the most important for you to reframe are judgment and failure. And I think for most people that I talk to, most entrepreneurs, those would probably be the 2 biggest ones, is judgment and failure. And that judgment can be from what you perceive others to think of you. Sometimes that judgment is coming from yourself, even, judging your own ambition or judging the things that you want for yourself and for your business, because it doesn't quite fit what you were told or the standard for your society or what you think you're supposed to want. And then obviously failure. I mean, that's one thing we've been talking a lot about lately inside my program and in yours, that like failure is an illusion. There is no failure. It's part of the process. There has to be failure if there is success. There has to be duality. There's always both sides of it. The only time that failure gets us stuck is when we make meaning from it, when we make it mean something about us personally instead of saying, this piece of content I launched failed, right? No one commented on it. No one took action, versus I'm a failure,
Mhm.
right? The moment we make it personal, we can't learn anything from it. And if we're not learning anything from it, then the failure has the power over us. And it's a
Mhm.
constant reframe. I think especially as a new entrepreneur, or each time you're working towards that next iteration, that next level, the judgment and the failure, you have to consistently reframe and
Mhm.
be aware of, and release the old structures, the old beliefs and ideas and the stories that you have around those two concepts, so that they're not holding you back.
Yeah, 100%. And it's like every day
Mhm.
you wake up, it's always a fight between your old identity and who you're becoming. So it is a battle. It's like it goes beyond the surface of what we see of people putting on happy faces on their selfies.
Yeah.
So, you know, coming up with these principles, being able to stick by them, and aligning my actions with those people. If I want to be the go-to authority, well, I got to be influential. If I want to be influential, I have to own what I say, because I believe in it, because I've seen the results and I've done it on myself.
Hmm.
So, from here, I started writing content where there's a particular flow and there's an energy created from this. And now not all this types of content needs to create this feel, but there's always one of these. And there's these things called emotional postures, that you're taking these postures on the content where you're training this feel on that, where like, whoa, that, Christine wrote that, and yeah, she's right. And then, or, oh, Christine wrote that post, and I really feel for her. So these postures, there's three of them. There's called leadership posture, there's equal posture, and there's inferior posture. In your content, there's at least one of these things. So a leadership posture takes the frame of where you're owning your stuff. This is the way it is, and that's it, because this works. Or you're polarizing against something, or you're celebrating a win, or I did this, blah blah blah. That's a leadership posture. Equal posture is more friend. That is what most coaches we find stick into.
Mm.
They're more like shoulder to cry on person, where somebody's dumping all that information on there, just either cheerleading, or they're like being really empathetic too much. Being
Hmm.
empathetic is important, but too much, you're in the friend zone.
Right.
Inferior is the vulnerability post, where we share a story in our dark place and how we arisen out of it. So whenever, the rule of thumb there is, when you share something like that, you always want to go back to leader. But here's why these are important. These are important is because if you're too inferior, people feel like they can just step on you, or like, what's wrong with you?
Hmm.
Equal, if you're too friendly, you can't push people.
Right.
Leader, if you're too much leader, they can't connect with you because
Right.
you're up on this pedestal all the time, right? So what's the balance? Well, it depends on how you want to talk about your content. When you're talking about the stuff you do in your program that creates results, own it. Leader. No using words like just. No using words like this works, although I believe this works, this also works.
Right.
No, it's this works.
Yeah.
And equal, okay, it's okay to share some of that too, but not too much. Equal is when you want to start connecting with your people and getting them to like you and know you. And then vulnerability posts, for sure, because people, psychology wise, these posts always work.
Hmm.
People always want to see other people that have been in a worse situation than them. But
Hmm.
the important thing on this type of post, the vulnerability stuff, is not to end it with vulnerability still. End it in some type of leadership frame where, what did you do to get out of it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Because people need to know that you know the path beyond that problem, but that you've
Exactly.
had the same problem, most likely, that your client is going through, that you can empathize, you understand where they are, and you are the one who can lead them to solve that problem.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. The post, anytime I write about the messiest things in my life, which I've got plenty of mess, in the past. Anytime I write those posts, they get the most traction.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's funny because, and it's always an evolution. Like every time we choose a new outcome, every time we step outside the familiar zone, every time we do something we haven't done before, there's resistance that comes up. There's those
Mhm.
old beliefs, those old thoughts, those old patterns. And, it's constantly recognizing and releasing that as we move towards what we want. And I still sometimes have blocks around really sharing the vulnerable stuff because I don't want people to think I don't know how to help them.
Mhm.
Right? Because I do. I mean, our
Mhm.
program's amazing. The results people get continue to blow me away beyond what we ever anticipated they would be getting out of this program. It's just phenomenal. And there's still like sometimes before I hit post, I'm like, oof, this is a messy story. This is really showing people that I am flawed. I have made bad decisions in the past. I have a lot of like stuff I'm not proud of, and I have been able to create a life I love. I have been
Mhm.
able to work through those things. I've been able to let go of the shame and the guilt and the
Mhm.
fear. And that when I share those things, people go, oh, she gets it. It's
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah. I mean, it's just another avenue for them to connect with you. And, if we said always, every investment I've made, I've always 10 times my investment back. And then you're looking at yourself, oh man, I just spent like 20K on myself and, I'm still not making a lot. And the people who I connect with is those stories where, hey, I maxed out all my Amex cards and then I knew I needed this and I was scared, but I jumped in anyways and did all these things. And now I'm making 100K and paid off all my debt. Like
Mhm.
those stories attract me because that's the position I've been in. I was in.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And it's sharing the truth of your own experience and the knowledge and the wisdom from that experience that you can help others, right? And
Yeah.
every time I bring it back to like, how is this helping? How can I help someone? It makes writing content so much easier. It makes going live so much easier. It makes, sharing that story so much easier when I frame it as like, how am I helping?
Hmm.
It takes me out of the equation and it puts the focus on the person who needs to know that there's hope for their problem, needs to know that there is a solution, that someone understands them and that, we've got their back and we can help them find a better way.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much, Kevin, for being on our Mindset Monday and on the podcast. And I would love for people to be able to connect with you, to work with you. If you're a health coach, a course creator, and you're in the personal development world, and you know that you have something to share, that you have a way of helping people to live a better life, and you need to get that message out in a way that actually creates the clients that you want and creates the life that you want to live. I can't say enough about Kevin's programs. They're amazing. He and his team are phenomenal at working you through this process. So, Kevin, how can people get in touch with you and learn more about what you do?
Yeah, they can hop on into our group, High-End Content Creation, Ads, and Nurture Systems. And yeah, if you can scope us out there, we do a lot of trainings on what we talked about in this interview. And that's really the best way for us to connect because Facebook allows
Cool.
us to connect really quick.
Yeah, and I know you put so much great content in that group. It's amazing what people can learn in that group, get started with, and then, there's ways that they can connect with you and
Mhm.
take it to that next level too. So, we'll make sure that we have a link for your group here in Mindset Monday and on the podcast so that people can come and find that group and connect with you. And just follow
Yeah,
Kevin on his social. See what it looks like in action when he's posting about his life and his adorable daughter and the amazing things he's been able to do as he's been growing and building this incredible business.
awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks, Christine.